My dad ruined my life, so I ruined his marriage. Story time. So me and my fiance, who we'll call Steve, met when we were in college. We were both in the same halls and we met when we were doing laundry one day. We got chatting and we found out that we were from the towns that were basically right next to each other. So we got really close after this because anytime we'd go home, we'd always drive together. After multiple trips going back and forth and hanging out whilst we were at school, we started to date. We were both really close with our families, so we told them about each other really quickly. Steve and my family got on really well, a little bit too well in the end. And I got along really well with his family too. So I was a year ahead of Steve, so I graduated and I moved back home because I got a really good job with really good pay. And when Steve was done with school, he moved in with my family. So after living together for about 3 years, Steve ended up proposing. And we have been planning our wedding ever since. So now for the part you're all here for. Looking back, there are plenty of weird things that happened that I just wrote off. I just thought it was my dad welcoming my new boyfriend into the family. Things like my dad would call Steve all the time. And oh my god. His name was saved in Steve's phone as daddy-in-law. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Whenever we had family parties, they would always end up in a room on their own and they were just chatting about guy stuff. The day I found out was literally like any normal day. Steve had the day off, so I gave him a kiss goodbye. And on the way to work, I realised that I'd left a document at home that I needed for a meeting in the afternoon, but it was fine. I was just going to go home in my lunch break and grab it. I didn't really think it was necessary to text Steve and say that I was coming home, so I just turned up. When I pulled into our apartment building, I noticed my dad's car. And again, I didn't think anything of it. When I opened the door to my apartment building, I was met with a trail of clothes on the floor. It was literally like something from a film. Now, I don't know what made me think about this, but there was no female clothes. And it was leading straight to the bedroom. And when I got to my bedroom door, I was shooketh. And something in my brain just told me to start recording on my phone. I flicked my light on, and that is when I saw my dad in bed with my fiancé. My brain was a mix of sadness, rage, betrayal. After the initial screaming from both me, Steve, and my dad noticed I was recording. So he found a towel and wrapped himself up in it, and then had the nerve, the audacity, to come towards me and tell me I was out of order for recording. Sir, I don't think you're here to tell me who's out of order. I told them I was only there to pick something up that I needed from work, so I was going to go. But I said, if either of you pieces of shit are here when I get back, I will be having words. And then I said to my dad, you better get a really good excuse in line because this video is on its way to mum. And with that, I stopped recording, I turned away, and I walked out. So my mum actually ended up filing for a divorce. She got the house, she got the car, and she got the dog. The arsehole for punching my mother-in-law in the face. Story time. Me and Steve have been together for 8 years, and last month I gave birth to our first child. So before I got pregnant, I was really close to my mother-in-law, who we'll call Sandra. And I'm not entirely sure what's happened to her since I got pregnant, but she just now hates me. As soon as she found out, she got really clingy of my husband Steve. And I even found out that she had been saying really nasty stuff behind my back. Apparently she said that she wasn't excited for the birth of her first grandchild. Honey. So I spoke to Steve and he spoke to his mum and he basically told her that if she doesn't snap out of it, he will go no contact with her. And roughly 7 months into the pregnancy, she did start to change. About time. So last week we had a family dinner. There was my sister, my brother-in-law, her kids and my mum. So Steve did all the cooking, he prepared all the food, and just as we were about to sit down for dinner, my baby got really fussy. So I went to feed her and the rest of them started to eat. Steve's niece said after the meal that she was still really hungry and that she wanted more food. So Steve offered to make her something else. So my niece declined and Steve just went outside to have a cigarette. So once my daughter was all settled, I came back in and I came back to like an empty seat at the table. My plate had gone and Steve had already put out my plate by the time I left. And that was when I saw my niece with a full plate of food. So my mother-in-law had given my niece my food. And at this point, I was so disrespected. She was in my own house and she'd already been chatting a little bollocks the whole time anyway. So we started having this raging argument. And that was when Steve came back in. I walk over to her because I was getting in her face. She then slapped my belly and said, well, you could do with not eating so much considering you could lose a few pounds anyway. Bear in mind, I've just given birth. And I just whammed that woman straight in the face. She fell straight to the floor. I feel like I might have even knocked her out for a second. And this is when Steve shocked me. Steve screamed at everyone and said that he was sick of all of this and told everyone to get out. So I watched them all walk out the room and he turns to me and goes, and you? I was absolutely heartbroken. Like, I packed up mine and my baby's stuff and I walked out of our house. So over the next few days, Steve was texting me, telling me how shocked and overwhelmed he was and that he just needed a bit of time and space, but he did want me to come home, and I ignored him. So I was absolutely baffled by Steve's behaviour. No man will ever get to treat me and my daughter that way. Tomorrow it'll have been about 2 weeks since I moved out, and tomorrow I'm going back to the house to serve him divorce papers. The time apart has made me realise that there is no fix for this and I don't deserve to be treated like this, and I sure as hell won't be letting my daughter be treated like this either. So what do you think? Am I in the wrong here? I broke up with my boyfriend because I thought he was cheating on me, but years later, I'd found out the truth. Story time. So me and my now ex-boyfriend, who we'll call Steve, had been together for about 2 years. It all started when we decided to plan a little trip together. I'd been saying for years I really wanted to go to Switzerland, so that is what we settled on. Let me tell you, as soon as that plane trip was booked, Steve started acting different. He would be home less and less, hiding his phone from me. He hardly talked about his day anymore. One of the biggest red flags was when he started to get late night calls and he would jump out of bed, like wouldn't let me see who was on the other end of the phone, wouldn't take the call in the room with me. I was getting so suspicious. So one day his best friend Alan comes round to our house. I explained everything to Alan. And even Alan started to act weird, and he'd never ever been like that with me before. The more I was telling Alan, the redder his face was getting. And that was when I just accepted that Steve was definitely cheating on me and that Alan knew all about it and was trying to hide it. I was not about to let anyone disrespect me like that, so I walked back into our house and I started to pack my bags. It was then that Steve realised that something was up and he kept trying to stop me from packing. But I was just so angry I couldn't even look at him. Shortly after that, my brother came to pick me up. I ended up staying with my brother for a few days and I ended up blocking Steve and his whole family on literally everything. A week later, my brother came home with a letter from Steve and I just tore it up straight away. I was like, no, not reading it. Eventually, I went and moved my stuff out of mine and Steve's house. And when I went in, there was another letter on my desk. Again, just ripped it up, didn't even read it. Let's fast forward 3 years to the present day. I am in a cafe and I see Alan. I hadn't seen Alan since that night, so I went over to say hi. But this man was not happy to see me. He told me that I must be the most awful woman on the planet. And I was like, oh, that feels a bit personal, Alan. Why? And that was when he told me that Steve had been planning to propose to me in Switzerland. I was so shocked that I dropped my cup of coffee onto the floor. The late night calls were from like an event planner in Switzerland. I just stared at Alan in absolute disarray. Alan gave me the dirtiest look and then walked away. And now I feel so nasty and so stupid. I could have literally had it all if I'd have just asked what was going on. And now I'm thinking, should I try and contact Steve? Let me know what you think. Am I the arsehole for not giving my ex-husband and his new wife my embryo? So my husband and I got divorced almost 6 years ago now. Before that, we had gotten married pretty young and we'd been trying for a baby. But after a year of trying, we were convinced that I was infertile. So we went to a fertility clinic and we found out that I was actually fine. And it was really confusing because we were not prepared for the problem to be with him. So we got him tested and turns out that, yeah, the problem lay with him. He actually had no little whoops. So we took multiple steps that meant we were able to have our son. However, we did end up divorcing very amicably not too long after our son was born. I've met his new partner and I think she's amazing. She treats him like one of her own and she's just brilliant. I can't ask for a better woman. They had mentioned that they wanted to start a family together. And I was like, oh, okay, like what's your plans? Adopt, other fertility treatments? And I thought my ex was pretty clear on the fact that he couldn't have biological kids. Because the test that we had done was typically a one-time thing. You couldn't get more than one baby out of it. So in December, they invited me over for dinner, which I thought was really nice. And it was a catered 5-star meal. And I was getting a little bit suspicious. I was like, why are we being so kind? And I thought, you know, it's Christmas. People get really generous around the holidays. La la la. But no. Turns out they had been planning to ask if they could adopt one of my embryos. They said that they desperately wanted to have a biological kid together. And I explained that, you know, that wouldn't be their biological child, it'd be mine, and I didn't want another one. So I also don't think I'd be okay with my biological child being inserted into another woman. They explained that because it had my ex-husband's little, you know, that would mean that it's also his embryo as well. And they said that he now deserves the opportunity to have a biological pregnancy with his new partner as well. I told them I understood all of what they were saying, but it was a firm no. I did not feel comfortable with that at all. They both burst into tears. They were absolutely heartbroken, so I decided it would be the best thing to just leave. I spoke to my husband about it when I got back, and he agrees with me. He says that there are so many other routes that they could go down. I thought it was all sorted. They knew I said no, but I have got people blowing up my phone. Our mutual friends are insisting on adding their 2 cents into the whole situation. So what do you think I should do? My ex left me at the altar and now he wants me back. Story time. So my ex-fiance, who we'll call Steve, just completely disappeared the morning of our wedding 2 years ago. He literally would not answer the phone to anyone, not even his own family. It was absolutely devastating. And I refer to this part of my life as the soul-crushing era. We ended up turning the wedding reception into a bit of a party to help me distract myself from the absolute pain of losing my fiancé. After the reception, I went back to our apartment and I slept on the bathroom floor in my wedding dress. Listen, don't judge, okay? We've all been there, alright? We've all been there. So the next day, Steve's mum actually came to my apartment. And she told me that Steve had actually run off with one of his exes. Steve and his ex had apparently reconnected a week before the wedding, and apparently he just couldn't go through with it after that. So yeah, instead of marrying me, Steve decides he's going to rekindle his relationship with his ex. His family was absolutely horrified, and I didn't hear from him in 3 months. You were supposed to marry me, and now you're not going to talk to me for 3 months. All right, Steve. So when he eventually called me, he told me that his ex had been hiding a child from him. And he decided the best thing to do would be to step up and be a father. At this point, I was so far past it. I'd been through a lot of therapy and I just had nothing to say to him. So this all happened about a year ago, which brings me to today. So after a lot of self-improvement and a lot of me rebuilding my self-esteem, I decided I was going to move to the UK. So last night I got a message request on Instagram and it was from Steve. He was basically saying, "Hi, I heard you moved to England and I think it'd be really good for us to connect when I travel there this year." I still have no clue how he knew that I'd moved. He was saying how he wanted to discuss what happened on the lead up to the wedding. He was like, "I hope I'm not overwhelming you, but let me know if you want to talk over lunch sometime." But I don't think I'm even at the point anymore where I crave closure. That's really hard to say, crave closure. But I also don't want to decline and then later on regret my decision. So what do you think I should do? My boyfriend cheated on me with my mum. Story time. So let's call my boyfriend Steve. God's sake, Steve, not again. So I met darling Steve at a work conference about 3 years ago. He was funny, good looking, charming. He's just one of those people where his very presence made my world a better place. So Steve is 8 years older than me, but our age difference never sort of caused any issues. And we literally clicked instantly. And within 6 months, we were living together. We were building what I thought was a beautiful and enduring life together. But about 6 months ago, Steve started to change. Steve was becoming increasingly distant, easily irritable, and he could no longer brighten up my darkest day anymore. Initially, I just thought it was some work-related stress or some other personal undiscussed issue, something along those lines. We'd literally always been honest and open with each other, but I was respecting his need for space. And I was just hoping he'd come to me when the time was right and when he felt comfortable. And it was about this time when my mum, who was going through the messiest divorce, asked if she could stay with us for a few weeks. She said she just needed a bit of time to get back on her feet. I figured this was my chance to help her the way she helped me all my life. So my mum finally moves in with us. It was good for the first few weeks, but then it all started to fall apart. I left work early because I literally had the worst migraine ever. Let me tell you, I was literally so desperate to get home, but when I walked into the apartment, I heard hush voices coming from my bedroom. And if my head wasn't hurting now, let me tell you it hurt after what I saw. Steve and my mum were in a situation which, let me tell you, left absolutely no room for doubt. The shock, pain and pure betrayal that I felt is indescribable. Now, I don't run, but in this situation, I was a runner, I was a track star. I have never fled a situation quicker than I ran out of that apartment. I couldn't even speak, I was in absolute shock. So I ended up staying at my friend Amy's house and I've been here ever since. I've lost my boyfriend and my mum in the same incident. I just have so many questions, how long has this been going on? How could they do this to me? Do they even feel guilty about it? But you know what? Despite it all, I found an alarming amount of strength in it. I've started seeing a therapist. I've started to plan the logistics of starting a new life. And just to rub salt in the wound, I have found out that my mum has actually moved into my apartment. Okay, here are my thoughts. Steve was already checking out that relationship before he cheated. Now is the time to delete them, block them, and unsubscribe from their life. They don't care for your feelings, it's time for you to not care about theirs. And I'm sure Steve has, an attractive single friend out there. Tell me your thoughts, feelings and opinions in the comments. I used to hate my husband, but now I think I'm falling in love with him. Story time. The title is in fact exactly how it sounds. So when I was 9, I was promised away to a family friend's son. So I was promised away when I was 9, and every year I just absolutely regretted my birthdays. It was 1 year closer to marrying someone I didn't love. So whilst I was counting down the years, I ended up meeting my dream guy. He made me so happy, he made me forget about it all. So eventually and inevitably I turned 18 and I ended up meeting my husband for the first time. We'll call my husband Steve. I hated Steve. Looking at him made my blood boil. and we got married 2 days after meeting. After the wedding, we didn't do anything. When we went on our honeymoon, he walked into the room and said, "Listen, I don't love you." Shock horror, Steve. He said, "Let's have an open relationship." And I was not about to argue. I was actually really quite happy about this because it meant that I could see my other guy, who we'll call Dave. And I was still desperately in love with Dave at this point. So we set out the rules for this arrangement. We had to sleep in the same bed every night, and we weren't allowed to talk bad about each other to our partners. So every year after that, we'd put on the same act when we went to family events. We were, to everyone else, a loving and respectful partnership. Me and my boyfriend Dave were doing very well. And Steve never properly dated. He was more of like a one-night stand kind of guy. And everything was going okay. That was until I found out that Dave had been cheating on me. Dave had been seeing a girl that he knew from high school. So after I found out, I went home and I cried my eyes out. My husband Steve could hear me crying in the bedroom and he came in to see me. He asked me if everything was okay. And even though at this point I still hated him, I told him everything. Steve then held me in his arms and he held me there for what felt like hours. And after that, me and him got so much closer. And after that, I took a break from dating. Steve was still going on his one-night stands, but we were keeping each other company a lot more. We did movie nights, game nights, he took me on nights out, and then eventually he stopped going on one-night stands. And I never said anything, I never asked why. So the other night, I caught him deleting all of his dating apps. So I sat down with the snacks and he scooted over to me. He scooted just so our shoulders were touching. And I got all nervous and fluttery like I was on a high school date or something. That night whilst we were watching the movie, he got a work call and he had to leave, but he promised me he'd be back as soon as he could. Now, I must have ended up falling asleep on the sofa because I woke up and I was in bed and Steve was cuddling me. After that situation, it's never been the same. The man that I had hated for years and years, the one that I had resented for who I thought he was, turned out to be the exact opposite. Now I have the biggest crush on my husband, and I can't believe it has taken me 3 years to work out that he is not responsible for this marriage. He buys me flowers every week now. And he even bought me an upgrade to my engagement ring. Love you, Steve. My husband's upset that I gave him permission to get with my best friend. Story time. So my best friend, who we'll call Amy, is a single girly. And she low-key has more in common with my husband, who we'll call Steve. Both of them are very positive people with great senses of humour, but I'd never seen them be flirtatious other than like a quick hello, being cordial with each other whenever they'd see each other. They were always very respectful of each other. So it did come as a little bit of a shock to me when I heard what they had to say. Steve insisted that he loved me, and this was nothing more than just physical attraction. They said that they didn't want to do anything behind my back. So they had basically come to me that day to ask if they could, be with each other. I genuinely think that they thought they weren't doing anything wrong by asking and telling me. I think it'd be easier on their conscience, and they thought that if they told me it wouldn't be classed as cheating, which, okay. So it probably did shock them a little bit when I burst into tears. Amy immediately started crying and apologising. She kept saying how she'd never do anything if I didn't agree to it, and she left very quickly afterwards. After this, I couldn't even look at Steve. I just packed up my bags and went to live with my family for a bit. After a short while, I really regretted leaving, and Steve was calling me literally every day. He said that he would never do anything to upset me, and I asked if they had been having an affair, and he outright denied it. So eventually I moved back in with Steve. We started discussing his and Amy's wish, so I finally agreed. He was very glad, and he reassured me that it was all just physical. Fast forward to now, and all I know is that the deed has been done. Steve offered to tell me about it, but I did not want to know the details. So at first, Steve was really happy he had got a spring in his step. Recently, he started to get a little bit more depressed. He was complaining that I had changed and that he missed me. He was upset that I wouldn't let him tell me what was going on with Amy. And he kept on and he kept on. And I told him that I would give him an unlimited pass if he would stop bringing it up. But that only made him more depressed. And now he is flat out blaming me for the change in our relationship. He said that I tricked him. He said that I could have said no. And that if I had done that, these changes in our relationship would not have happened. Then he started saying that I'm wrong for cutting off Amy because now she's upset that she lost a long-term friendship. So I asked him what he wants from me now because I feel like I have done everything to try and make this relationship work. I told him that he should probably see someone about his depression, but he just shook his head and told me that I didn't get it. So at what point do I say enough is enough? Oh, and by the way, him and Amy are still seeing each other. Here's something I wish I knew sooner. Story time. So I'm a photographer and I have photographed a lot of people in my time. And everybody thinks they're ugly. Your grandma, your child, your best friend, most models, some actors, and maybe even you. It's always your granddad saying, "Oh, don't take my picture, I'll break the camera." However, one day his grandkids will treasure those pictures. You take a picture of your best friend and she's like, "Please delete that." But you think that she looks unreal. She looks beautiful. She looks just like herself. She's been captured in a moment where she is utterly comfortable in her own skin, but she hates it. You will never see yourself with the love that others have for you. And that is what makes a person beautiful. Not angles or contour. You will never be objective about your appearance. But luckily for you, your friends and family are also never objective either. They're biased to see you through the way that they smile when you walk in a room. They want every picture of you that they can get, because each photo of you is tied to your memory. You are the worst judge of your own appearance. So trust me when I say that you look fine. Now smile, because you look beautiful. Am I wrong for being mad at my mum for marrying my fiance's dad? Story time. Me and my fiance Steve have been together since we were in our last year of college. And we are nearing our 5-year anniversary. So for some context, my mum was a bit of a busy girl, and she had an affair with a colleague when I was 16, which led to my parents' divorce. And she's been single ever since. Now, sadly, my fiance's mum passed away 2 years ago, and Steve's dad has also been single ever since that. So Steve proposed to me during lockdown, and we had to postpone the wedding due to everything that was going on. So in January, we decided it would probably be about time for our families to meet. So the meeting went really well, everyone was getting on just fine. So this morning, I get a call from my mum, and she tells me that she has just eloped. And I was shocked for many reasons here, but mainly because she hadn't told me she was dating anyone. So I was like, hi mum, like, who the fuck have you got married to? And she goes on to tell me that her and Steve's dad have been dating ever since January. And that now means that next year I'm marrying my stepbrother. One of my friends told me I was too ugly to be dating my boyfriend. Story time. Just a little pre-warning, prepare for the audacity. So a few years ago now, it was my friend's birthday party and we're all in her garden getting to know people, because it was one of those where like there was friends from loads of different parts of her life. So I'm talking to this girl that I have never met before, and I was telling them that I was going to have to leave shortly because I needed to go pick up my boyfriend because he'd just been in LA for work. And this girl, who we will call Amy, asks if she can see a picture of my boyfriend. And I will never not shout about my man, so I got up a picture of me and my Steve. This is where shit gets a little bit crazy. She looks at the phone, she looks back up at me, then looks back at the phone and goes, "You're dating him?" Big emphasis on the "you're." Listen, immediately I knew what she was implying. My boyfriend is a solid 11 out of 10, and it's very clear that she was telling me this to make me feel less than perfect. But it gets worse. So the picture that I had showed her was on Instagram, and she starts scrolling through all of my pictures. So she finds this picture of me doing the splits on a beach. I've grown up dancing, I did gymnastics when I was younger, so I'm naturally very flexible. She then looks me dead in the eye and goes, "Oh, that's why he's with you." So now not only is she making me feel like I'm not pretty enough to be with my boyfriend, she's also implying that he was only with me because I'm flexible and that would be a better time for him. Did this make me feel like shit in the moment? Yes. So actually, we went to my best friend's recent birthday party and I turned up with my now husband, the same guy, and Amy was there. Turns out Amy got divorced. Husband cheated on her with a model. Maybe it's because she wasn't flexible enough. Boyfriend's best friend tried to ruin our relationship. Story time. So a little bit of background information. My boyfriend Steve used to be friends with this one girl, and we'll call her Amy. Now listen, this friendship was more flirty than anything. So me and him got to know each other through spring, summer, and we would always hang out after school. And sometimes Amy would be there too. So one night, me and Steve are FaceTiming and we admitted to each other that we actually really did like each other. So the next day we went on a date and it kind of just went from there. At this point, I'd started to become really good friends with Amy too. And after that we told her we were dating, she started acting really freaking strange around me. Whenever I would see her in the corridors at school, I'd try and say, hey, have a little conversation, and she would just give me this dirty look. She'd be like, so I started saying to Steve, like, I think Amy's really mad at me for something. And he said that he would talk to her. So before me and Steve started to date, Amy had mentioned that there was this guy that she wanted to ask to prom. And she said that she'd liked him for a really long time, actually. So Steve goes to speak to Amy. Steve comes up to me. We have the debrief. And he says, right, I know what the issue is. Apparently, you were flirting with this guy that she wants to take to prom. And that is when I started to connect the dots and I was like, oh shit. And that was when I realised that the guy she had liked and wanted to take to prom was actually my boyfriend. And as he is telling me this, she starts FaceTiming me. And I'm like, hey sis, how are you? And she goes, well, I've called to just confront the situation head on. And the first thing she says is, you knew I liked Steve. She's like, how could you do this to me? I've been making a mood board about our prom experience for years. It's given
crazy. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me that you liked him before we started dating? And then she says, well, what do you mean? You knew I liked him. Did I? Did I? But I was sitting there thinking about how they'd been best friends for like 5 years and nothing had happened. Basically, this isn't my fault. And then she says, I'm pretty sure if you just break up with Steve now, me and you can get past this and we can still be friends. I think that one might be a no, Amy. So I got Steve out and I was like, listen, we've talked this whole situation out. I didn't tell him all the specifics of what she said. I very much trust Steve, but I just wanted this whole situation over and done with, and I didn't want to drag him into it as well. So it kind of all settled down, but then a few weeks after that, she decides to get her brother involved. We'll call the brother Dave. Amy's brother and Steve were best friends, by the way. And buckle in, huns. So Amy starts saying a load of shite about how I had been hooking up with Dave, which obviously isn't true. Anyway, one day, Dave texts Steve and is like, I find it really strange how you've cut Amy off considering your girlfriend is the issue. And apparently Dave chose violence. Steve's like, what do you mean? He goes, your girlfriend texts me all the time. She booty calls me. We've been hooking up for ages. He's like, I can send you the evidence and the text. She's even sent me pictures that I can send you for proof. Obviously, none of this is true. Before I started to date Steve, I'd been dating this guy and he actually like leaked some of my pictures. So that is how he would have got pictures of me. So it actually happened that my best friends had to explain to Steve and back me up that this had actually happened. And it was at this moment that he realised that Dave and Amy were absolute lunatics, and he blocked them both and they haven't spoken since. And me and Steve are still together. Am I wrong for telling my terminally ill sister that she can't have my mum's engagement ring? Story time. So my mum passed away when I was 7 and she gave my uncle / her brother her engagement ring. The ring was originally her mum's and it has been passed down through many generations. And eventually I would be able to give it to my daughter or son when they wanted to get married. So 2 years after my mum passed, my dad remarried. This woman had 2 daughters. I wasn't really that close to them, but I also didn't have anything against them. We'll call her eldest daughter Amy. Now, unfortunately, last month, Amy was diagnosed with terminal cancer. A few days after we got this diagnosis, her boyfriend actually proposed to her, said that Amy had mentioned my mum's engagement ring. She said she absolutely loved it because it was just so beautiful. He said that she had always dreamed of having my mum's engagement ring because of how stunning it was. So her boyfriend told my dad's wife, and then my dad's wife told my dad. All 3 of them were like, just give it to her because you know one day you're going to eventually get it back. They were saying how nice it would be for me to be able to fulfill her wishes given the circumstances. I made it very clear that I did not want to give them my ring. However, I did say I could give them a photo of it so that they could get it replicated. We love a compromise. Woo! Unfortunately not. I wish I could do my makeup without getting mascara all over my eyelid. And they did not like that suggestion one bit. God, I forgot how gorgeous this flawless filter is. And this was when they told me that I was denying her a family ring. But with all due respect, like, she is not part of that family. Amy never even met my mum. So the more I thought about it, I was a little confused as to how Amy knew about the ring in the first place. And this is when he told me that he had been showing Amy pictures of the ring throughout the years. He said that he thought this would have been a nice little bonding thing to do with them when they were younger. My stepmom literally begged me to give her this ring. It went as far as Amy even writing me a letter asking if she could have my mum's ring. She said it would be an absolute honour to get married wearing my mum's ring. And I'm getting shit from my dad, my stepmom, and my stepsister's fiance. So what do you think? Am I wrong here? This is a moment that I will literally never forget. Story time. So I was the poor kid growing up. My mum used to send me to birthday parties with no present just so I could eat. And it got to a point where I knew what was happening and I was embarrassed as hell. In 5th grade, I went to my best friend Amy's birthday party. And she asked me if I could sleep over the night before the party. And obviously this was a win for me because I got to see Amy more, and it was also a win for my mum as well. So when Amy was in the shower, her mum called me into the living room, and laid out on the living room floor were all of the toys that Amy's mum had bought her for her birthday. She then told me that I could pick a present and that I could wrap it myself. She then let me put a tag on it that said that it was Amy's birthday present from me. I have kids of my own now, and I'm still so grateful to Amy's mum, and that one act of kindness has never left me. This might just be the pettiest thing I have ever done. Story time. So my little brother has a girlfriend who we'll call Amy. And this girl might just be one of the most self-centered and obnoxious people I have ever met. So not too long ago, they came to stay at mine for the weekend. And when they left, Amy left so much of her stuff at my house. Probably because she didn't know where anything was, because she left her shit everywhere. Anyway. She left this North Face jacket and then like all of her toiletries. So about a week later, her and my brother ended up moving into their first apartment together, which is all fun and games, right?
Wrong. After he paid for the moving truck, the utilities, half of the rent for the month, the girlfriend cheats on my brother with her ex. She then proceeds to kick my brother out of the apartment. So not only now was he broke from paying for everything, but he was also heartbroken and homeless. So at some point, she must have realised that she'd left half of her stuff at my house, because she started calling, texting, blowing up my brother's emails to see if I could send back half of her stuff. Now, I wasn't going to send them back because of how much she had disrespected my flat when she was here. But my brother was like, please, can you just do it? So she gets off my back and leaves me alone. So being the loving and supporting sister I am, I bundled up all of her stuff and put it in a bag together. I was giving that North Face jacket no care or attention at all. I then just wrote a really nice note and I put it in just saying, sorry that it took so long to send you your bits, hope they get there safe and hope she has a really nice future with her new boyfriend. And the note was written in permanent marker. And the paper just so happened to be resting on her North Face jacket. And because it was written in permanent marker, the marker bled through to the North Face. Oh no! And in another turn of unfortunate events, the shampoo cap just happened to be not screwed on properly. And it's just such a mystery of how that could have happened. And then apparently there was a razor in there, which I obviously had no clue was in there. I just picked all of her stuff off my bathroom floor and put it in the bag. That didn't have a cover on it, so in transport, the blades had made little micro tears in her jacket. So she emailed all of this to my brother. And after that, we never heard from her again.